Hey everyone, it's Les from Comfortable Shoes Studio, and this is another episode of Art Making, Urban Sketching with Fountain Pens. So I want to take a minute and apologize for the weird camera stuff. I'm still getting used to the Pocket 3's tracking ability versus locking it down. And I thought it would be really cool if the camera actually tracked my fountain pen as I drew. And as you can see from this video, it's trash. That is not a good idea. Don't ever do that. Just lock the camera on your piece of paper and go with it. Yeah, so I did eventually lock it down. So in this video, I'm using a technique that I'm going to call a faux ink wash. So if you've been following my Instagram at all, if you are interested in checking out my Instagram and sort of in the moment images, I've been doing a lot of ink wash lately. I did a video about ink wash. Ink wash is great, but I really like the look, and you can't really fake it in other ways or with other materials other than ink and water. So this is what I'm calling a faux ink wash technique. And my camera is having a lot of issues today. I really should have just clamped it to the flat part of the chair. Anyway, so this TWSBI Go is filled with hot pink ink from Carcos. So this Carcos ink is water soluble. It's a deep magenta. It's a great, if you are looking for a hot pink ink, it's pretty good. It feels pretty good in the pen, on the nib, and on the paper. This paper is very rough. It does a good job. The TWSBI Swipe, the feed in it is a little dry compared to like what I like for a fountain pen. Now, I do tend to modify my fountain pens so that they work better. Historically, I've used the TWSBI Go for writing and not for drawing, so I've never modified this nib because it's wet enough for writing, whereas I like my sketch pens modified and very wet in terms of how much ink they dump on the page. So this puts down a moderate amount of ink, or a normal amount of ink, if you will. And so I've got a layer of magenta ink. So it's got this initial sort of find your area, find your lines with the magenta ink. And then I'm going to go over it with the Jinhao 82 Pocket, which has the waterproof Rohr and Klinger ink in it, the latte ink, which has become fast a favorite sketching for me. It's really nice and black, and it's truly waterproof. Once it's on the page, it doesn't move. It's right up there with platinum carbon black in terms of like darkness and lack of movement on the page once it's dry. Really great sketch ink. No affiliation, just a super happy customer. All right, so I'm going over my drawing, firming up the lines, adding in plenty of black ink. Yeah, just going over those lines, keeping them loose. I think Fude nibs are really great for keeping your lines loose. The natural line variation as your pen is moving over the page feels loose to me. I've gotten much more comfortable with this pen, over time. And you can see like the chair leg was not long enough. The perspective was off on two of the angles. So I needed the chair legs and the foot to all be on the same line. And the chair leg closest to us, I just added a little rectangle to it to make it the right size. All right, so then to bring this into shadow, and this is truly a ink wash, but it's also a faux ink wash. So the ink wash is acting as my lift for the magenta ink. So it's sort of a mixed media. I mean, it's in my art journal, so I'm using the lightest of my ink washes in a water brush to lift and move that magenta ink. Now, I could have done this with just a regular water pen, and it would have done just as good a job. You can see the pink lifting into the gray, adding some warmth to this image that, you can also see the areas where there's no pink, like in the back of that chair where I didn't draw the pattern with the pink pen. I'm adding some shadows in. And this is all with the lightest of my ink washes. And Yeah. So as I've been working with these ink washes, I have a bit of I wish I'd put less ink in my number one ink wash, and of course I can change that up. I can add a couple of additional milliliters of water to my big bottle that I mixed, um, and it'll like lower it down so that it's not as dark. And then I did decide to add in my watercolor crayons because why the heck not? Um, and I'm really kind of digging these watercolor crayons. They're so inexpensive, and the colors aren't quite right. So I toned down the color with a little, I think it's black or brown, just to make it more of a navy color because the blue is very intensely blue. And I realized it didn't lower it all that much, but the magenta does mix with it a little bit. And I just clean my brush right off onto the page when it gets loaded up with a color I might not want to move somewhere, um, which I'm sure is horrifying some folks. But that's just how I roll when it comes to my art journal. I'm not worried about like it being perfect. This is a learning experience for me. I'm messing around with that hot pink ink. Um, Yeah, okay. So here the food court at the mall where I was sketching really just emptied out. Like when I had shown up and started drawing that dude in the blue jacket, um, it was full and loud and busy, full of people eating pizza and doing other things and talking. And then by the time I finished drawing him, and I did spend about 20 minutes drawing him, maybe 15, it had completely cleared out. This is not a food court that people linger in at all. So it had cleared out, and I would have had to have moved to get a good view of anyone else. So I decided to draw my soda bottle. It is wonky on here. My perspective is off. The bottom of the soda bottle is fatter than the rest of it, and that's okay. And you can again see here, I did that magenta underdrawing, and then I went over it with black or with the ink wash brush to lift up that magenta, and the resulting color is a really nice pink black color. And really, pink is not the only color you can do this with. I have done underdrawings in water soluble blue ink before. I've done underdrawings in yellow. I've got a bunch of fountain pens right now loaded up with a bunch of different inks. I find that blue really suits the underdrawing really, really well. Magenta is just something that I've had kind of a idea that I want to do like a process style color system in a fountain pen. I've had that idea for a while, and I've just been tracking down the right yellow, the right magenta, the right cyan, and of course black always goes with it. So you do a bunch of layers of those colors and then finalize it with the black ink. Um, so anyway, this magenta ink I'm pretty happy with. I know there are lots of pink inks out there, but I like this one because it was super cheap on AliExpress. And I know from the amount of sketching that I've been doing and the amount of ink that I've been going through, I'm more than halfway through my bottle of latte ink. Yeah, I've just been sketching and drawing a lot. I've been filling a lot of papers and pages in my sketchbook with ink. So ink being expensive, I'm trying to be a little thrifty with my ink choices. In this case, a guy showed up. He had a Marshall's bag on his table, and he was kind of ducked behind it, like he was hiding from everyone. And I thought that was a fun little scene, so I decided to do a very quick sketch of him. And it wasn't long before whoever he was shopping with showed up and sat down in front of him, and then they were gone. So it's an interesting thing about drawing at the food court is that you don't really have a lot of time to necessarily draw people, because people either stay in the food court quietly to eat their food or eat fast and get out. It depends on whether they got kids or how many people are there. I don't try not to draw children or teenagers, because for me they're not as interesting unless it's like their fashion choices are interesting. In terms of like faces and portraits and things, I almost always draw older people, because their faces are way more interesting. When someone's got a couple of laugh lines or scowl lines on their face, way more interesting to me than the smooth lines of a young face. So that's what I usually strive to do. But anyway, thanks for being here. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting, and I will work out the camera stuff, and next time it will be better. Thank you for being here. Bye.